Hey guys, Merry Christmas Eve. What a cool night to be here, right? If you are here with me, I am so grateful. I'm here every night at 7 o'clock, and I promised that Christmas Eve would be no exception. So I am so glad that you're here. I'm Dr. Tammy, and I talk about all things hormones. And sorry, I was doing like a little message thing. I'm getting used to all this TikTok stuff. It's like I see these weird little things and little puzzles you got to move around. They got to make sure you're real, I guess. Merry Christmas Eve to you too. Crown lips. Not sure. Can I just call you crown lips? Is that okay? I love it. So yeah, if you guys would, if you like the content, please just tap the little screen and show some hearts, and it allows the algorithm to bring more people in, which is wonderful. So I am known as the Hormone Queen, and hi, Misty. You're the Queen Lips. I love it. Nice to meet you. So, yes, so I'm so glad you're here, and we talk all things hormones, and I'm here for you, but I always bring topics. So tonight's topic is low motivation. So I want to jump right into it. But as I see your questions, a lot of times I'll just interrupt and answer your questions because that is my priority, because I know that you guys have lots of questions, comments, things you want to bring to the table. And your comments might help someone else too. And someone might be resistant or reluctant to ask questions, so you might ask something that they need to know, so don't hold back. And if I'm talking, then I might not see you, and if you don't get your question answered, then please come back around and ask the question again, and I'll make sure that I get everybody taken care of. So okay, so motivation is an interesting thing, and did you know that there is actually a motivation hormone? And there's a creativity hormone. So, of course, being all things hormones, right? I have to talk about hormones. So, but I think it's really interesting with motivation because some people just are never motivated, have never really been that motivated, right? And I don't know where that comes from exactly. I think it's just different personality types, maybe. And some people are really motivated. It's really cute. My fiance and I tonight were talking about a personality test, and it's called an Enneagram. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. And so my son and I had taken it last week, and so we're like, you have to take this test. And it's just really interesting because I'm a 3. I don't know if you guys know what you are. Hi, Susie Q. Hello, honey. I don't know if what you are on that personality test, but I'm a 3, which is very motivated. But that doesn't mean I'm any better. It's just different, right? So some people might be just a different type that really aren't, all that motivated. But sometimes just getting out of bed in the morning takes a tremendous amount of motivation. So even though my personality in general is very motivated because I want to serve, and I have so much in me and I want to teach, and it's just, I think we all have our gifts and I want to share, and I'm very passionate about what I do. Sometimes people are really passionate and motivated about being a mom or being, whatever they are. And then sometimes it just seems like our motivation can get crushed because we get tired. And the biggest thing that can affect our motivation, hi, honey, nice to see you. Hello, healthy gal. The biggest thing that can affect our motivation is hormones. Because I think even in your menstrual years, when you're having menstrual cycles, we all know that there are, quote, times of the month when we feel better. And then there are times in the month when we're just tired and we want to eat chocolate ice cream and go to bed and watch movies and Netflix or whatever. So I think that motivation is just something that waxes and wanes for sure. But research shows that women after menopause have a severe dip in motivation. And that is because our hormones of motivation drop significantly because our ovaries, which are our fertility glands in our organs, if you will, produce the hormones that create motivation. And so what do I mean by motivation? I really mean that there are just wanting to do things like go to the gym. And we don't all have to go to the gym, right? But to do the things that we know, and like exercise. And I always tell people, if you want to have good metabolism and you want to age well and you want to have muscle tone so that you don't fall. And the other night we talked about muscle tone is more than just, biceps. Muscle tone is in the sphincter in your gut so that you don't get reflux in the urethra, so that we don't get incontinence. So I would love to tell people that you don't have to exercise, because it seems like a dirty word, but you do. And to exercise, you have to have motivation. And I had to change my exercise routine from night to morning because I just didn't have time at night. And so you make time for the things that are important to you, right? So that was a big switch for me. I did that probably about a year ago. I started switching my routine to the mornings because I knew I had to get it in. And I do exercise because I want to be able to eat more stuff that I wouldn't normally be able to eat. But I also exercise because I want to keep my agility. And if I could go back and tell my 40-year-old self a few things that I don't know now, one of them would be to really strength train and to get more muscle, because it's kind of like that thing, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? But it's that thing, if you have it, you're less likely to lose it. So if you are in perimenopause, please, please, please listen to me. And that can happen anywhere from the age of 30 or even sometimes earlier. Build that muscle. Take that time, especially while you have more of your motivation hormones intact, to build that muscle. Because if you do any kind of strength training, you know that you can go a week or 2 or 3 weeks without exercising at all, and you don't lose all your muscle tone. So if you don't have it and you start losing it, then that becomes a problem, right? So it's so much easier when you have those ovarian hormones that build that structure that you have. Now, this is not all about exercise, but I find that exercise is one of the main things that we have to have motivation to do, because it's not something that we just normally like to do. And there's so many distractions, and there's TikTok and there's Facebook and there's just, and then there's kids, or there's life, or there's work. And I always find things to do just to keep my mind busy, because I'm just, that personality type, right? But then when it comes to things that I don't really want to do, then I struggle with motivation. So there's also that aspect of, when you don't want to do something, you'll absolutely lose motivation, right? Okay, but I'm talking about motivation where you do not want to do anything. You just don't give a crap about anything. And if that has happened in your perimenopause or menopause years, you are not alone. And there's nothing wrong with you, except that you are in ovarian failure. So everybody who knows me and comes here every night, you know that the term menopause means absolutely nothing. And so when I put menopause all over everything, it's just to set the stage that we're going to be talking about hormones, right? Because that lets people know in our avatar, if you will, that this is the group of people who are most commonly going to come to the table to hear what I'm talking about. And I am a 55-year-old menopausal female, so I know what I'm talking about, right? So if you have noticed, especially since you went through menopause, or maybe you had a hysterectomy, or maybe you've struggled with hormone issues forever, maybe you've had endometriosis, PCOS, maybe you've had estrogen dominance issues, and you feel like you have been just in a brain fog forever, then this is for you. This conversation is for you. And one of the things that happens after menopause is we experience something called ovarian failure. And so, again, I don't like using the term menopause, because that is just a year without periods. What we are dealing with is complete ovarian failure, because we're born with all the eggs we're ever going to have. And once those are done, our fertility is done, and we stop having periods, our ovaries literally dry up like raisins. And I always say, if you did an ultrasound on a woman 10 to 15 years out from menopause, the ovaries are non-detectable. So I'm not kidding when I say non-detectable. I'm not kidding when I say ovarian failure. And I'm not kidding when I say what we are going through is hormone depletion syndrome. Menopause means absolutely nothing. So we have to call it what it is. And we have to start using that narrative. We have to start using, that nomenclature, which is ovarian failure. So what do we do about it? Well, number one, we have to get over the fear of the word estrogen, because people hear the word estrogen and they immediately internally panic. I'm 45 for first time right now. I'm on my late period waiting. Yeah. Yeah. 45. That is not too early for perimenopause, falling into menopause. Most women, it hits about 50. So it's just kind of a different average for people, but perimenopause can start in the mid 40s, even in the 30s. So, but one of the things that happens is when our ovarian hormones decline, we not only lose estrogen, but we lose testosterone. And testosterone is one of our main motivation hormones. And I'm going to talk about all the different hormones and what they do and what we can do about them as well. But I always have to get over the fear with people that estrogen is not a dirty word. And I'm done now. Mine started at 42. Yes. So everybody has different age range. Please share. I love that you guys are joining the conversation, and I'll interrupt and try to respond to everybody. But I'm kind of like, my brain goes rabbit and then I jump. So, but yeah. So if you're feeling, especially perimenopause or menopause, and the trouble with perimenopause is that your hormones are all over the place. They are spiking and dipping and spiking and dipping. And when they're all over the place, it's really hard to maintain that blood flow to your brain, it seems like, to not have the brain fog and the sluggishness. And I tell my patients, when they ever start thinking about things like they need to do, like go to the gym or change the way they eat, I'm like, let's get you on hormones first, because I call it lead in the butt. And it's literally like you feel like you have lead in your butt and you can't even get up. You just don't feel like doing anything. You have brain fog. Even if you did have the motivation to get up and do something, it's like you're just so foggy brained that you don't want to do anything. Horrible mood swings. Yeah. Emotionally erratic. It's like you can't even think through a process. Like if you wanted to write a book, right? I mean, you couldn't even think through the process to do that. So how could you get motivated to do something like write a book or, go do some art or something, because you don't even have the hormone balance for the clarity to do that, right? So again, we have so many different aspects to this when our ovarian hormones are gone or when they're being really erratic before they're gone. Black cohosh twice a day, is that okay? Yes, vitamin D. Yeah, so black cohosh is great, but there ain't, and I always say there ain't enough black cohosh or evening primrose oil or yams to take the place of the ovaries hormones that you need after ovarian failure. And people oftentimes do jump into taking natural, quote, alternatives that just help with symptom control. And that's good, but that's no different than a doctor just giving you an aspirin for a headache, right? Because they're not really addressing the underlying cause. And so, although those things are good and healthy oils and stuff like that, and vitamin D, absolutely you need D to put your calcium in your bones. But I truly believe, and that's the conversation that I love to have, is that women have to have ovarian hormones. Now, what ovarian hormones make all the difference in the world? And there are what we call organic bioidentical hormones. So you can get all your ovarian hormones, your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, any of those. So bioidentical is at 50. That's awesome. And so we're not talking about synthetic hormones, and we're not talking about unopposed estrogen, meaning without progesterone or testosterone or the other hormones. So when I talk about estrogen, I did a talk last night and I talked about the 3 different kinds of estrogen. So if you are scared of estrogen, make sure you know it's the problematic estrogen that you're scared of, and that there are different kinds of estrogen. So when I'm talking about estrogen, I'm talking about the exact estrogen that your ovaries make or made, that we're talking about that you need replaced, given back to you, right? Okay, so let's get into the content here. So the first hormone of motivation is, of course, estrogen. And estrogen helps motivation because estrogen helps with your energy levels. It feeds and makes new cells, new brain cells, new liver cells. I mean, estrogen feeds everything. When you don't have estrogen, that's the reason you dry up, your skin dries up, your bones dry up, your vessels dry up, everything dries up. And so, if you don't have blood flow to the brain and you aren't making new blood vessels feeding the brain, then you're going to have brain fog. And when you're in a fog, you're not motivated to do anything. I mean, it's kind of like for me, when I first wake up in the morning, I'm super, super groggy. I'm just not a morning person. And so, like, the thought of doing, which is why it took me a while to get motivated to exercise in the morning, because the thought of doing anything as soon as my eyes open is just pretty unbelievable. So, I have something that I do, and I'm going to talk about it in just a minute, called micro habits. But that's what actually helps me get motivated when I'm not motivated. So I am on bioidentical hormones. And I think that's really important that you have the base to actually allow you to do the things that, to have the stamina, to do the things that you don't always want to do, because we have to do things in life. We're moms and daughters that taking care of our elderly parents. There's so many things. Um, my skin's gotten really dry this month. Never was this bad before. Dry skin, I find, because I am on bioidentical hormones, but I find that this is wintertime. I don't know where you live, but wintertime is really hard on the skin. So a dehumidifier can really make a huge, a humidifier. I also have a dehumidifier because I live on the lake and we get a lot of like moisture in the house. So, but a humidifier in your bedroom, West Virginia. Yeah, I don't know what the temperature is there right now, but if you're running your heat a lot, oh, that dry air, that'll really get you. Sometimes I feel like I'm just parched when I wake up in the morning. Soap, yeah, absolutely. It's super cold. Okay. Yeah. So wood heat is really drying too. And make sure you get a really good moisturizer. So all those things and hydrate. That's really helpful too. Um, but I find that sometimes your estrogen might need to be adjusted if you're on bioidenticals, just because that helps with hydration to the skin as well. So that might need to be adjusted. West Virginia. Hey, we got a bunch of West Virginia. I always think like West Virginia, I think like Christmassy. I mean, it just seems like a really Christmassy town. I use oils on my skin and drink tons of water. Yep. Oh yeah, I'm all about the oil. I have a Irish background, and so we tend to have like really super what like pale freckles, and so I think that's just, I mean, that's the kind of skin that wrinkles pretty fast. So my mom wrinkled really early, so yeah, hydrate and estrogen, really big deal. Okay, so I won't go through the whole estrogen thing tonight unless you guys want me to, but I just want to start with estrogen being a super important hormone for just keeping you healthy and happy. I'm so happy to finally find a dog that really knows her hormones. Thank you. Oh, that's sweet. I think you're talking about me. I love you guys so much. Okay, so the next one is dopamine. So I love this. Dopamine is called the motivation molecule. How cool is that? If there was actually a molecule that was responsible for motivation, it's dopamine. Okay, so what is dopamine? Well, you're probably familiar with dopamine being the addiction hormone, right? Estrogen, testosterone, dopamine for sure. Okay, good. Okay, so dopamine is the neurochemical that is made in the brain. This is absolutely fascinating to me. That is your addiction hormone, but also your motivation, because we are motivated by things that trigger these things and these addictive behaviors, right? So if you have a habit, you have these patterns that you build up. And when you do that thing, it actually triggers more dopamine. So if you're a smoker, you start thinking about smoking, and all of a sudden, dopamine fires off in the brain. And so, dopamine is like the best chocolate chip cookies you've ever had. Dopamine is when you get that trigger of that rush, like when you get the adrenaline rush, or when you win on the slot machine. I mean, dopamine's just firing off like crazy. The people who have drug addictions, the problem with drugs like meth is that meth increases your dopamine exponentially. And so the first time people do things like heroin, cocaine, or meth or something like that, the dopamine is just lit up in the brain. And the problem is that they keep depleting the dopamine every time they overcharge it. And so you can never get that dopamine high. And that's why you need more and more and more of the drug. And so tons of studies have been done on dopamine. And you know what? The number one thing is, unfortunately, that lights up dopamine in the brain. I mean, they've done PET scans and, these different like MRIs and stuff that they can track where the brain actually lights up. The number one thing that lights up dopamine in the brain is sugar. Sugar lights up more dopamine than methamphetamines and cocaine, than anything. So, that can be a real problem too. And when you think about sugar in the diet, MRI tech, cool. So I can't remember. It's not actually a PET scan, but it's a specific PET scan that they can actually see that different areas of, what is that? It'll come to me in a minute. But it's a specific scan that they can see. And it could be a PET scan. But anyway, yeah, so they can see those areas light up with dopamine, and it's nuts. So that's one of the things. There's so much sugar in our environment. And that's another thing that can take your motivation down, is if you've ever eaten a lot of sugar. Like I had some cookies and some chocolate after we had our Christmas dinner tonight. We had some ham and protein and stuff too. But sorry. Send me a message. TikTok sent me a message. I don't even know what it meant, but okay, I'm back. Sorry. But yeah, and then I had this and I had a little glass of wine too. And then I was like, my motivation was really down. And I'm like, but I love you guys and I have to come do this tonight. So I love to do this. So, I kind of had to let my insulin and my sugar kind of, settle back out again. And then I have my energy. But sugar can definitely be a demotivator. Even though it is a motivator in the beginning and your dopamine spikes, it's not maintainable. So I think that we have to be really careful with addictions, but you can create addictive behavior that serves you. So exercise can be an addictive behavior. So ever since I really got regular about exercise, maybe it's because there's a term called OCD. I have a very obsessive brain. And whenever I get into a habit, it's really hard to get me out of it. So it's just part of what I do. There is a great book. If you guys are taking notes, write this book down. It's called Atomic Habits. It's a game changer. And it's funny because it seems like God kind of sends me these messages sometimes. And the first time I hear something, I'm like, okay. And then the second time somebody says something, I'm like, okay. The third time he sends me a message, I listen. I'm like, okay, I get it. And so I had several people that were telling me about that book, Atomic Habits. And I kept thinking, okay, I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it. And it's so interesting how you can stack habits. So with dopamine, I'm going to talk about stacking habits in just a second. But it's so interesting to me that you can stack habits. So I stack habits I do my journaling in the morning because it's kind of hard for me to get motivated and woke up, and, my Bible stuff. And then, then I go over my schedule for the day, and then exercises on the back end. So I always watch the clock. And as soon as 7:30 gets there, no matter what I'm doing, I pick up and I go do my exercise, right? So I've stacked those habits. So even when you don't have motivation, habit stacking can be really helpful. Okay, so I've got dopamine, but I want to answer this: optimal levels for estradiol. Okay, so it depends. Everything is always, it depends, right? But the optimal levels for estradiol depend because are you checking blood or are you checking saliva or are you checking urine? Okay, so dried urine is probably one of the most accurate tests. And there's a test called the Dutch test, and we have the Dutch test too that we can do. And then there's saliva, and saliva is a measurement of what is actually in the cells. Then we have blood, and in our office, we oftentimes do the blood, the serum, through a blood draw because we'll do insulin and thyroid and iron levels and vitamin D levels and all that. And we just get one big picture of where someone's at. But I find that, especially if you're using bioidentical topicals, then which is the safest route. I mean, there's nothing you have to worry about that, very safe. Then you probably want to do saliva testing. And yeah, 57 years old. So blood and serum, I usually go for about, everybody's different, but about 60 to 80 is probably optimal for an estradiol level if you're on replacement. Because if you aren't on replacement, it'll like come back less than 5, that little less than sign in math class. I'm just like, I always go back to like 5th grade math class when I think of that little less than sign, because your ovaries are literally done. They're not making ovarian hormones anymore. They literally dry up and like look like raisins, or you can't even see them anymore. So yeah, so that would be a good level. However, some of my patients are around 50 on their estradiol levels and start getting breast tenderness. So then we have to like even back down a little bit more. So that's why I say everybody's different. And it kind of depends on the route of delivery too. So if you're on patches or you're on troches, the dissolvables under the tongue, sometimes you get the estradiol levels higher. But if you can't get the estradiol levels higher, sometimes you have to check the thyroid, because thyroid and estrogen compete for each other through their conversion in the liver. And so this is very interesting. One time I had a Tacoma says I'm less than 24 on your estradiol. That's pretty low, which is funny because a lot of doctors will tell you if you're that less than 5 or 0, that's normal, because it's normal because you don't have ovaries anymore. But that is normal, I guess, if you don't have ovaries, but that's not okay. That's torture. It's like somebody saying your thyroid levels are non-detectable, but that's normal because you don't have a thyroid. So suck it up. That's just clown world. I always have to go to clown world. That's not so. But if you can't get the estradiol levels up, then sometimes you have to check the thyroid. Because I had a patient one time who I just kept upping her estradiol and her troches, the dissolvable under the tongue, and she was still having hot flashes like crazy. She had the brain fog. She was just not herself. She was depressed. And so I was like, kept upping it. And I have a pharmacy that I use out of Florida sometimes, and they're absolutely amazing. And so I'm talking with my friend, the pharmacist there. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And she's like, well, check her, I always check the thyroid, but basically optimize her thyroid a little bit more, go back and check it again. And sure enough, that was what was going on. So, and unless you really know what you're doing with all this stuff, you can really miss that, right? And even when you do it all the time, sometimes just having that outside perspective. Oh, you're mailing your kid in. Yay. I'm so excited. Can thyroid lessen estrogen patch effectiveness? It absolutely can. Yeah. And it depends. Usually it's when your thyroid is low that it affects your thyroid conversion. And she was talking about her kids. So I'm just going to share. If you're having trouble getting a doctor to listen to you, and which is very common, and they won't check your levels, we have a home test that we can mail to you, and it's a saliva test, which they are very accurate, very reliable, especially if you're using topical hormones. And it's a saliva tube. You fill out this little questionnaire, put your saliva in the tube, and then you mail it back. And then included in that is one of our hormone experts to talk to you about a plan and getting on bioidenticals. Hi, Megs. You said I'm 42, already have not had my period in over 6 months. Okay, so that would be what we call early menopause. Tacoma has their consult January 5th. Yay, I'm so excited, Tacoma. That's awesome. 42 is pretty early for menopause. And again, the word menopause just means a year without periods. So 6 months, you're almost technically in menopause, right? Because once you go a year without periods, but you are in ovarian failure. I mean, you are on your way, because unless you're on some kind of hormone therapy or something else happened, one of the common things that I see with ovarian failure that early, and it's funny because doctors actually will use the term ovarian failure, which we should be using for every woman who hasn't had a period in a year. If you are younger, they'll say ovarian failure, but it's still 100% of us will go through ovarian failure, but they'll actually use the terminology if you're in your 30s or 40s. And it is not uncommon. I have seen women who have gone through, who've been married for 30 years and their spouse dies, and the cortisol strain on the body actually will cause their ovaries to burn out. And I've also seen women who have had breast cancer, and those chemicals or the chemotherapy will cause your ovaries to burn out quickly. So, but usually it's some kind of weird stress, or autoimmune disease can cause your ovaries to burn out. So lots of things can do that. Tacoma said my blood serum progesterone was less than 0.45. Yeah, so that's pretty low. So absolutely need some progesterone. So we'll fix you up, girl. I saw you said you had your appointment soon, so that's cool. Okay, so I'm going to jump back here just a minute, and we talked about dopamine. So it's interesting because when dopamine breaks down after it had that, oh, I can't wait either. After you've had that initial dopamine blast, dopamine normally breaks down into a chemical called serotonin. And serotonin is just your chill hormone. And I love genetics because there are so many different processes in the body. But when we look at most of the genetics that we do in our functional medicine practice, we look at lots of things like methylation and vitamin D metabolism and the way your liver metabolizes different medications and hormones. But one of the things is the way your body breaks down dopamine into serotonin. And some people who have certain genetic alterations don't break down dopamine into serotonin very easily. And here's the other crazy thing. Most of your serotonin, and I'll say most people know what serotonin is because when Prozac came out in the 80s, the happy pill, the commercials that had little smiley faces bouncing, we all knew that that was keeping more serotonin around. So I think serotonin got a little bit more press back then just because it was known as the happy hormone, right? And everybody wanted to be on Prozac. The problem with Prozac is, or those, Effexor or any of the SSRIs or SNRIs like Effexor or Zoloft, is that they numb you out. So talk about anti-motivation, and how many women have imbalances in all their hormones, and they go to the doctor telling them that they don't feel good, and they just throw them on an antidepressant. Talk about numbing you out and taking your motivation away, taking your lifeblood away. This is the time we should be thinking about doing things we never thought about, travel or starting our own business. We've had all these responsibilities all our life, and this is the time now that could be really fun. But now this is a time we don't feel like doing anything or even reading a book or learning a new skill. And if you don't learn new skills, your brain is like a muscle. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. And so it's just this vicious cycle of no motivation and not doing anything, and then no motivation, and then and you're just dying. You're just literally dying on the vine. Paige said a website. Yes, I absolutely do. And my lovely fiance is my moderator, and I wanted to call him my bliss bouncer, but he didn't like that idea because he bounces people off if they're being rude, and usually they're not, but sometimes people are. So it's distracting when people are being icky. So he's awesome, but I'll have him put the link in the chat there. But it is Hormone Bliss, because having hormones is bliss. So it's hormonebliss.com. And Paige, if you will go to my link in bio, it takes you to something called a link tree. And in that link tree, it has so much information. I have all these freebies you can read about hair loss and what to do about it. There's genetics in there. There's a couple of my ebooks on hormones. So lots of stuff. There's a shop page. You can get all our supplements and stuff, all our good stuff. But yeah, so our website is Hormone Bliss, and then you can buy the kit. That link in bio is there too. And so, which the kit we're talking about is check your hormones, and then we can figure out what's going on. She said gained 85 pounds on antidepressants because I was misdiagnosed. Yeah, one of the things you mentioned, ADHD, is that's actually a symptom of perimenopause and menopause. So when you do your checklist, when you send your kid in, ADD and ADHD are actually on this list. So you may not even be misdiagnosed as ADHD. You are misdiagnosed as having a hormone imbalance or ovarian failure. So I'm so sorry that happened to you, but we can fix you. We got you, girl. Tacoma says, you're talking about me specifically tonight. I just lost my motivation. Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. It's totally a thing. And I also think that when we start having stressors in life and our adrenals go out and we just start, like having all these family issues and just being on this planet for a while, our adrenals get wiped out. So cortisol, keeping all that balanced, but estrogen and cortisol balance each other as well as estrogen and thyroid. So they all interplay together. Happy Christmas Eve to you too, Constantina. Thanks. How many days should I wait in taking the test after eating soy? After eating soy, soy is what we call a phytoestrogen, and it really shouldn't affect things that much. And the way estrogens work in the body, holy crap, I'll just be transparent. I'm switching over and I'm going back to the creams for my estrogen, but I for a while have been using the under the tongue troches. And so I was going to wait this morning, so I didn't take my troches because I was going to use my cream after my shower, but I got busy today. And so I was like, I hadn't even taken a shower yet. And so my fiance said, like, are you ever going to take a shower? And I was like, oh yeah. Talk about lack of motivation. It's like Christmas Eve, right? And so I'm just in my pajamas and preparing for tonight's talk and stuff. And it was like noon or after. He's like, are you going to take a shower? I'm like, oh yeah. And I'd been really moody this morning. And like, I was like, well, one thing, our office is closed. So I had forgot to mention to the girls to put a sign on our office that we're not there. And somebody texted me and said, is your office open today? And I was like, holy crap. So, I kind of just started going. And then I realized I was like, why am I letting this little thing bother me? And I'm like, oh, I haven't had my hormones this morning. So it is really, really crucial. And I think even more so because I had endometriosis and PCOS and I was estrogen dominant most all of my life. I had fertility issues. I mean, just a hormonal hot mess that I think really that disrupted a lot of my adrenal function, autoimmune thyroid, and so leaky gut. And so I feel like that's why my system is so sensitive and it just sucks up my hormones. So this is a lifelong commitment. And people always ask me, how long are you going to take your hormones? Because there is this myth that estrogen causes cancer, and it's not true at all. And so I always tell people, I'm going to take my hormones until science figures out a way to regrow my ovaries. Because if that happens, great, then I won't need them. But 100% of women lose their ovaries. Period. Like we lose they're gone. They're never coming back unless, like I say, science figures out a way to bring them back. So, and I am really dependent on them. So it would be really scary if I ended up on a deserted island somewhere with somebody without them. I don't think anybody would want to go with me. So anyway, okay. So, but yeah, so our website, Hormone Bliss, and it is my passion project. I want 50% of women in the US, maybe even worldwide, to at least know the truth about hormones. And when they go through ovarian failure, to be offered hormones and to be offered options, because it is just absolutely cruel to make a woman suffer. Just like I always say, if you didn't have a thyroid, they wouldn't tell you couldn't take thyroid hormones. So if you don't have ovaries, estrogen is the life thyroid. Estrogen is the life hormone. It is the life everything. It's what makes you fertile, is what keeps you from getting cancer, all the things. So Okay, so let's go down the list just a little bit more. So I went from dopamine talking about serotonin. So dopamine breaks down into serotonin. And this is so cool. 90% or more of your serotonin, your happy hormone, is made, guess where? In the gut, in your small intestine. So your intestines literally are your second brain. And it's so funny because just through experiences in life, you say, I have this gut feeling. You really do, because your serotonin, your peace hormone, your ability to really feel calm is made in your gut. So if you're stressed out, cortisol, you're not making enough serotonin, it's there. So it's like it's real. Tacoma says, thank you for enlightening us on why we feel crazy during ovarian failure. Thank you so much for using that term, ovarian failure, because again, like menopause is like, so doesn't matter. Nobody cares about not having periods. I mean, it's awesome, right? Because like all those feminine products are expensive and stupid. And I always say, God did not include me in on the conversation about menstrual cycles. And heck, for that matter, even having babies. I mean, it just like, I would have said, I don't think that's a good idea. But I wasn't there that day at the conference table. So, yeah. So nobody cares about not having periods. It is literally ovarian failure. That is the problem. And you know what? Talk about crazy. If a man had to have his testicles completely dry up at the age of 50 or sooner, whenever that happened, and had to live like that without testosterone until age 100 or whatever, nobody's going to live to be 100 without estrogen or testosterone. But it would be a completely different world. Can you imagine? And we think of testosterone in men as the motivation hormone, right? So, because they're usually like in business, they're all motivated and they're doing stuff, right? So, yeah, testosterone's huge. I'm gonna talk about that in just a second too. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of skim through this just a little bit more. So keeping your gut healthy is very, very important. Your biome, your microbiome. I'm super sensitive to probiotics. So in our link in bio in the shop, I have all my like fruits and greens and stuff. And I love the fruits and greens because it has probiotics in it. And it's like my body just, it's got prebiotics because it's got the fiber that actually feed the the bacteria, right? And then you restore the probiotics, but it's also got a bunch of like nutrients and stuff in there too. So that's how I get my probiotics. Um, but yeah, so keeping your gut healthy is super, super important. If you've ever done food sensitivities to, detect things causing inflammation in your gut, that can be really helpful too. Okay, progesterone. Progesterone is the yin to the yang of estrogen. And when I say that, it's because estrogen does the first part of your menstrual cycle and progesterone does the second part of your cycle. So it kind of grabs onto estrogen and says, hey, calm down. We don't need all this PMS stuff going on. You don't need to run the show anymore. We need to just chill out. And I think of it as like in those water parks when there's a big bucket that fills up with water and then the kids are running down here and it only fills up like halfway before it dumps. And if that bucket were to fill up too much and it were to dump, it would literally like pelt the people down below, right? It would be painful. So that bucket's only supposed to fill so much. But in estrogen dominance, or when we have what we call PMS and things like that bucket fills up so heavy because estrogen, the bleeding, is just pouring blood in that bucket. And then now there's so much estrogen and so much blood in the bucket that it literally just dumps. And then you're like spending $45 on your feminine products that month. And so the actual mammal model, like in dogs and cats, is 3 days of light spotting, which even like if you've ever had a female dog or cat that wasn't fixed, I mean, that usually don't even know that they're having a period, right? So we are not meant to bleed that much. So too much estrogen can keep your progesterone like limited. So they have to balance each other out. Yes, it's recorded, and I go back and I post them the next day. So it'll say live replay. I'll say live replay motivation tomorrow. It's Christmas Eve and we still have to do our presents tonight. So I might not get it up tonight, but I'll get it up tomorrow. Oh, and my moderator said, yeah, he's got my back there. Okay, so progesterone is very, very important. Progesterone also helps with sleep. So if you're not sleeping well, you know you're not going to feel like crap the next day. You are not going to be motivated to do anything because your brain is wired to rest. And so all you're going to think about is rest. So progesterone is super, super important in that. And not sleeping definitely will sabotage your motivation. And because progesterone is the balance to estrogen, because both are important, I almost think of progesterone as the cheerleader that kind of says, hey, we got to keep everything in check. So keeping everything in check is also what keeps you from overdoing things, because when you overdo things, you can also lose your motivation because then you're absolutely exhausted. And I'm guilty of this all the time because I'm super driven and I'm constantly working and writing books and doing all the things. And then all of a sudden I hit the wall, right? So progesterone, sleep, the chill, but cheerleader is what you need. I never had a regular cycle until the age of 40, so I was estrogen dominant with low progesterone. Yeah, it makes your brain and your tissues so sensitive when you have just been flooded with estrogen all the time. And it's interesting because there are different kinds of estrogen, and if you didn't see my live last night, we call it E1, E2, and E3, and there's actually 25 different metabolites of estrogen. And one of the estrogens is really what we call proliferative. And God doesn't make a bad hormone and certainly not a bad estrogen, but there are some estrogens that are a little more problematic than protective, right? And so that particular estrogen that's a little concerning is called estrone. And that is the estrogen that is copied, if you will, in synthetic primer or in synthetic hormones. So yeah, come on. I'm in Arkansas. So yeah, I'm only licensed in Arkansas, but our online program, we have people that can see people everywhere. So in the US. So, but technically, if you want to see me, you can come to Northwest Arkansas for sure. Okay. So let's see, progesterone, super important, keeps things chill. And the different kinds of estrogen, it's very important that when you are working with someone, they know about the different kinds of estrogen, because it is estrone, or that potentially problematic estrogen that causes all the estrogen dominances, symptoms, and the weight gain. So it's all about the balance and keeping them in check. And progesterone is the kumbaya, let's all get along. Hey, you need to calm down. And it really speaks heavily to estrone, which is really important. Okay, and then there's risk reward, right? So again, progesterone is that sort of chill out, but also tells you that, kind of downplays the risk. Sometimes that helps you feel motivation because you're more willing to take risks sometimes. And sometimes just getting out of bed in the morning seems like a risk, right? Okay. Let's see. Micro habits, are we did that? Yeah. Oh, survival. Yeah. So that's the risk reward hormones. And then adrenaline and cortisol play into your survival stuff. So when you feel scared, you have a cortisol response, which is usually made from your adrenals. But the ovaries also make cortisol. So when you don't have ovaries anymore, when you're an ovarian failure, your body is depending on the adrenal glands to make its cortisol. Cortisol is your body's natural anti-inflammatory. Like if you've ever had a cortisone shot, that is used as an anti-inflammatory. And the problem is that when you are relying only on your adrenal glands after ovarian failure, it is really hard for the adrenals to keep up, because your adrenals also regulate blood sugar. They also regulate your blood pressure, and they also make adrenaline that you need during times of stress. So adrenal fatigue is a real term, and it's so sad to me. The doctors don't even recognize the adrenals unless you're in adrenal failure or have a tumor or cancer on your adrenals or something. But that should be like one of the main go-tos when someone is tired, because lack of motivation, it's impossible to be motivated when you're tired, right? So, um, I like the also the thought with just kind of building habits, not just stacking habits like I exercise in the morning and that's just part of my morning routine, but just those little wins. So, if you can say, if you are overweight and you start working out, it's probably going to be at least 3 months before you start getting muscle definition and tone. I remember like when I first started working out in my uh, late 30s, 40s, when I really got serious about it, like, it was, like, 3 months later, and I was like, "Oh, I got those little, dips where the muscles are and stuff." So, it's one of those things that you can't have instant gratification for. You really have to commit to baby steps. So, you really have to say, "My win is to get 3 workouts in this week, 3 five-minute workouts, not even a 20-minute workout," just simple things like that. Or, "My win this week is going to be get a hormone test kit." I'm being silly, but so you have to have just those little wins for your motivation. Um, Progesterone is the hormone that combats anxiety. Yes, mostly. However, there is a hormone called oxytocin. I'm going to get to that on the end one here. Oxytocin is actually the yin to the yang of cortisol. So babies experience oxytocin. You get oxytocin when you make eye contact with someone, when they tell you you tell someone they love you, or like when babies are held and when they're crying, they are having a cortisol adrenaline response, and oxytocin is when you hold the baby and the baby calms down, right? So oxytocin can absolutely combat anxiety as well. But it's the fluctuating hormones or the total crash of hormones that causes most of the anxiety. And anxiety is usually overproduction of adrenaline from the adrenals before they absolutely give out. So you're having almost these panics like you're not pulling out in front of a car or you're not being chased by a bear, but you sure feel like it. So we talked about heart palpitations last night and the adrenaline and vagus nerve and parasympathetic effects. So hormones regulate all of that. So it's pretty complicated, but yeah, progesterone is very big, and progesterone helps with sleep. So when you're not sleeping, you're going to be anxious too. What's tested in the kit is estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And so those are the three basics. Usually you get these balanced, everything else is cake. But once you do this, you also get to meet with our hormone experts. All my protocols from being a doctor for doing this for the past almost 25 years now. This year will be 25 because I graduated 2000. But all my protocols over the years, and my protocols are based a lot on the issues I had with all my hormone issues and all the patients that I've seen over the years. So, it was a sharp learning curve, but it's pretty easy. You fix these three things, and people are usually golden because those are the main hormones made by the ovaries. And estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone can convert into each other. This is kind of cool. I have to do this. I have to at least do one little drawing of some sort, right? Okay, so your liver makes cholesterol, and cholesterol turns into progesterone, and that turns into estrogen, and that turns into testosterone. So all these hormones are constantly converting back and forth. And so it's just this whole interplay. So you fix the main ones, you fix progesterone and estrogen and testosterone, they can convert over here to DHEA, they can convert over here to cortisol. So you fix the main ones, usually everything else falls into line. And when you fix estrogen, the thyroid falls into line. When you take the stress off of the adrenals, because now you are giving your ovarian hormones back, then everything else falls into line too. So it's just a beautiful thing. And occasionally we'll get issues with, not being able to get it right or balanced. And that's what our program does, is we work with you until we get it balanced. And I promise every person that comes in our program or sees me in my office, if you stay the course, we always get it right. But your body is different from everybody else's body. And so sometimes we don't always get it right the first time, and things shift and change. If you have a major life event, a death or something that really impacted you, then that can also throw your cortisol off, which then throws your estrogen off, throws your thyroid off. So then we have to balance all that again, right? So occasionally I'll just have, check my hormones or check my blood or urine or, whatever I want to do and see where I'm at, because things do shift and I'll be like, I'm feeling crazy again. And so then I'll go check. And that's the beauty of what I get to do for myself, because I do that for so many people too. So it's a God thing. I truly believe that this passion was created, for me. I always say God does things for us and not to us, because truly having all of the estrogen dominant issues, endometriosis and PCOS and infertility, which it took me 13 years to get my son, and he's 20 years old now. So if I hadn't had those challenges, I wouldn't be able to help people. And I have a fertility program too that was born out of that. And so I have had women who have failed in vitro multiple times. And I mean, it's as simple as using natural progesterone, methylfolate, and changing up their diet a little bit. It's absolutely nuts. Estrogen by fixing the thyroid. Yes, absolutely. Because thyroid and estrogen convert to their active forms in the liver. So as they are kind of passing by each other, they definitely do interact. And that's like a whole nother drawing that I can do. And I'll do that some night for sure. Okay, I want to get through these just a little bit more. Micro habits, again, just small things that you do. Meg says, my dream is to be a mom. Yeah, so if you're having problems with fertility, I don't know your whole situation. If you want to DM me, I don't have my program out available, but I have a book. It's called 100% Natural Baby. It's on Amazon if you want to go find it there. Dr. Tammy Tucker and 100% Natural Baby. Yeah, and it has my protocol in it, so it's amazing. I mean, I've had women get pregnant within 2 to 3 months, again, that have failed in vitro multiple times, were told their ovaries were gone, and it's not, it's sad. It's clown world. It's crazy, because it's really not that hard once you understand genetics, methylation in the liver, and how estrogen and progesterone play in the sandbox. It's sad that it's not more common. And the fertility industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's not safe. And the drugs that they use to get people pregnant and to induce ovulation, and it's not even necessary. And it's all synthetic hormones. I've had multiple patients that have gotten breast cancer from those synthetic hormones. I mean, it's clown world. That's all I can say. But anyway, okay. So I want to get to testosterone, and I know I'm almost up on my hour here. Testosterone is so, so important to talk about. And I am really a big proponent of testosterone, and our program does testosterone. So even if you haven't been following me long enough to feel safe with estrogen, testosterone is so safe, and it is game changing and life changing and life saving, because you need your muscle, you need your brain, and testosterone is, I can't say enough about how it helps with motivation. And if you've ever seen a guy in his drive and, corporate execs and things like that, I mean, we're not trying to turn you into a guy. And that is one of the fears that women have, is I don't want to be bulked up and beefy, and I don't want to be, grow a beard and all that. And it's like, no. Okay. Are you listening? This is too crazy. I get excited when I talk about this, because when I first heard this, it blew my mind, and I had to do so much research to make sure this was true, because it was so unbelievable. Women actually make more testosterone than estrogen. And yet we think of testosterone as a male hormone. And I am not kidding. We make more testosterone than estrogen. Now, that's apples to apples, right? Men make a whole lot more testosterone than we do. So a woman's testosterone level is probably 20 to, sometimes we'll push it 60 to 80, but usually 20 to 50. A guy's testosterone level is 200 to 1,000. So they make a lot more. But almost always, unless you've had a long long history of PCOS and progesterone deficiency and estrogen dominance, unless you have that situation, when you check a menopausal woman, and I remember I said most of them are when they're in ovarian failure, the estrogen is that little less than 5 sign, like there's none, she'll always have a little bit of testosterone. So, like, for the longest time, I was like, that's really interesting. And then, like, as I started doing my research, I'm like, it's a thing. It's really true. So, but the problem is your testosterone also declines when you go through ovarian failure too. So it's super important. Amazon search and couldn't find the book, but I'll DM you. Okay, yeah, it's 100% natural baby, and yeah, I'll send you a link to it. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Okay, so I got testosterone in there, and so symptoms of low testosterone in women. This is fun. Lack of drive, physical weakness because it helps with muscle tone, brain fog, low confidence, and fatigue. So all the things. And also helps with sexual health too, with libido and interest, because that is a part of life. And if you don't feel strong, if you don't feel like you're into, like when you're not intimate with your partner kind of thing, or you don't feel attractive or attracted to your partner, it starts changing the whole dynamic in your life, and motivation to do much of anything is also lost. But also things that increase naturally increase your testosterone are being intimate. That actually does increase your natural testosterone, and in men too. So that's one of the things the urologists tell them is engage in intimate activities because it actually increases your testosterone. One thing that increases your testosterone is strength training. So you need strength training to make your muscles, but when you strength train, it actually increases your natural testosterone. And I think internally, I can almost feel my testosterone rise probably at least 100 points when I do, a real heavy workout or something like that. So I can actually feel it. Okay, and then melatonin is your sleep hormone, but melatonin actually works on your immune system, and melatonin actually works on your motivation system and your brain. And that just blows my mind because melatonin is made from the brain and it actually helps create more dopamine. So melatonin is just fascinating to me. And your creativity hormone, last but not least, is oxytocin. And I know I talked about oxytocin just a little bit earlier. But when you are in love, when you feel good, when you feel nurtured, when all your needs are met, your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've eaten, you're full, you're not cold, your bladder's empty. When you are in that space and then you feel love, you feel connected, and I feel connected to you guys. You're like my tribe. I see your names come up and I'm like, Suzuki's there, Elaine's there, it makes me, even though I can't even see you, I feel that connection with you guys. And it's just such a beautiful thing. So the oxytocin, it just takes that connectivity or a hug or, just your kid telling you they love you. I mean, there's just that really motivates you. And I truly believe God made that hormone oxytocin for moms to motivate them to, like, when your kid smiles, you want to do more for them. So when your partner tells you they love you, you want to do more for them. When the people at work show their love or appreciation, you want to do more for them. Suffer from loneliness. Yeah. So loneliness, oh, hang on just a second. They're doing that thing because they're about to kick me off. Loneliness can decrease your oxytocin levels, which can then decrease your creativity and your motivation. And so creativity actually helps you have more motivation. So, there are so many groups to suffer from loneliness. I mean, even pets, like my dearest friend, well, her pet just passed away recently, but that was her oxytocin, that was her connectivity. So, and on Facebook now, there's so many groups that you can join and stuff. So nobody has to feel alone, or just come hang out with me every night at 7 o'clock and don't feel lonely and be with crazy Tammy and we'll visit. So I know they're going to kick me off. And like I say, my family has, we're going to do our Christmas presents here in just a minute. So I hope Santa came and there's something up there for me. I'll tell you tomorrow night what I got. So if you come back tomorrow night, 7:00, I'll be here. And I think our Advent, the 25 symptoms, is up. There might be one more. I don't remember what it is, but that'll be our topic tomorrow. And then sometimes I'll just talk about anything you guys want to talk to. So if you DM me and you tell me I want you to spend the whole hour talking about this, I can ramble on about anything hormones for hours. So somebody's got to cut me off. So, okay. I love you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And you're so welcome. And it is my thrill to do this. And please tell your friends and share. And again, a live replay will be up. Christmas Day is the last day. So get your kits tonight. It's only $119. That's like super cheap because if you go to Quest or LabCorp and get blood, I mean, it could be $400 or $500. And so our Christmas special is $119 and it's normally $299. So yeah, get it now. If you haven't gotten it, go there. Link in bio or just go to Hormone Bliss because it's all about Hormone Bliss, right? Okay. And then people ask me what happens when you do the kit. You talk to one of our hormone experts and get on some bioidentical hormones, which is wonderful and life-changing. And I want to change everybody's life. So anyway, I love you guys very much. Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful night. And I will see you tomorrow.
Okay, how many, pretty girl?
Oh,
What we got?
it's Christmas Eve.
No, it wasn't. Okay, you want me to tell you what the number is?
Yeah.
What the number is. Showed that came in tonight, probably 1350, and new followers will be about 200, give or take, when it's done. Test kits, I couldn't really tell. No, I didn't get a big feel for a lot of test kits tonight. But I kept pushing the last 24 hours so far too. But I kept pushing the 24 hours. So how many viewed? 1,200, 1,300, 1,000, 800, 800.
887.
It seemed like more than that.
It's Christmas Eve.
I know, but it seemed like more than that.
But
there were a lot of follow.
Yeah, 200 new followers.
Yeah, there's going to be more than that. That's low. It's going to be more than that. It always is. You say that the first number, and it ends up being more. So it's not bad. Yeah, like you said, it's Christmas Eve, and the last 15 minutes, 20 minutes, nothing. Nickels, ones and twos, nothing.
What do you mean ones and twos?
They can't, new people joining.
Oh.
They didn't join after tonight after 7:40ish.
Yeah, they're all doing their Christmas stuff.
I was surprised that many people were on there, honestly. The regulars were there. They're so cute.
Well, they're getting new kits, so as long as they get kits and buy the program, come on, regulars, come on, bring it.
And they are such warm leads,
Yeah.
I mean, they're in. I mean, they drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, when you let me start to hammer them for other contacts and other groups and so on and so forth, I'm telling you, someday. But in the meantime, it was good. It was a good topic. Yeah. And there are people wanting the live, so that's good. So that will help stimulate too if they go to your stuff. I'm tired. I'm gonna go to bed. Just go to bed, babe. Just go to bed, though.
Well, Santa came for you.
Why don't I? Humbug. I don't like Santa Claus. Santa Claus is not my friend.